Honestly, I don't know which senator's niece you are, or what supply clerk requested a little field trip, but this is the kill house. This is for shooters. You're a liability, and you're going to get someone here killed. The crowd of young, eager infantrymen, bristling with the kinetic energy of men who felt they had nothing left to prove, let out a collective, condescending chuckle. It wasn't loud, just a ripple of dismissive sound that confirmed their instructor's judgment. Staff Sergeant Decker, a man carved from granite and self-regard, pointed a thick finger at the woman standing quietly apart from the group. She was of average height, with a frame that seemed almost lost inside the stiff plates of her body armor. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, functional bun, and her face, devoid of any expression, showed neither defiance nor fear. She simply stood in the oppressive heat of the pre-deployment facility, her gaze distant, as if the insult was nothing more than ambient noise, like the hum of the ventilation system or the distant drone of a Reaper drone overhead. She offered no reply. Her hands, covered in worn Nomex gloves, moved with an unhurried, deliberate grace. She didn't look at Decker. She didn't look at the smirking soldiers. She brought her rifle up to a low ready, her thumb finding the safety selector and clicking it from safe to semi-auto and back to safe with an audible, practiced snick. The sound was small, yet it cut through the stale air with a strange finality. Then, she adjusted the sling, letting the weapon settle against her armor with a soft thud, a familiar weight in a familiar place. Her silence was absolute, a void into which Decker's arrogance tumbled and vanished without an echo. But up on the catwalk, suspended in the shadows above the concrete maze of the kill house, Colonel Vance saw it. He wasn't watching Decker. He was watching her. He saw the stance, the way her feet were planted, just so, a foundation of perfect balance. He saw the way her rifle wasn't just held, but was an integrated part of her posture, an extension of her will. He saw the utter economy of her movements, a stillness that wasn't passive but coiled, a predator's calm. It was a ghost from his own past, a memory from a dusty, classified operation in a forgotten corner of the world, the signature of a tribe so elite their very existence was a rumor. He leaned forward, his knuckles white on the railing, a cold premonition washing over him. Decker had just made the biggest mistake of his career. If you believe that true respect is earned in silence and proven by action, type competence below. The mandatory pre-deployment tactical assessment was a rite of passage at this forward operating base, a final filter before units were certified for the complexities of the new operational theater. The scenario was designed by combat veterans to be unforgiving, a crucible of stress and chaos. Staff Sergeant Decker, as the lead instructor for the close quarters battle module, saw himself not merely as a teacher, but as a guardian. He believed his abrasive methodology was a necessary evil, a tool to strip away the false confidence of untested soldiers and expose the fatal hesitation that could doom a fire team. His philosophy was simple. If you couldn't handle his verbal abuse in a controlled environment, you would crumble under enemy fire. He paced before the assembled squad, his boots grinding on the sandy concrete floor. Listen up. The scenario is designated Tango Downfall. You have an 8-minute window. Inside this structure, he gestured with a sweep of his arm at the grim, featureless facade of the training building, are 6 hostile targets confirmed armed. Intel also suggests a non-combatant, a hostage, is in the primary structure. Your mission is simple. Enter, discriminate, and neutralize all threats. Failure to correctly identify the hostage is an automatic mission failure. Exceeding the time limit is an automatic mission failure. Any questions? He scanned the faces before him, his eyes finally landing on the quiet woman again. You, desk jockey, you got that? Point, shoot. Don't hit the person who isn't shooting back. Think you can manage. The woman blinked once, a slow, deliberate motion. Her eyes, a pale, indeterminate color in the harsh fluorescent lighting, met his for a fraction of a second. Understood, Staff Sergeant, she said. Her voice was low, flat, and carried no inflection. It was the voice of someone reading a technical manual. The utter lack of emotional response seemed to enrage Decker more than any argument could have. He saw it as insolence, the quiet arrogance of someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them. He didn't see the profound discipline it took to achieve that level of calm, the thousands of hours of training that had burned away every superfluous reaction, leaving only pure, unadulterated focus. Colonel Vance watched from above, his jaw tight. He recognized Decker's type. Strong instructor, dedicated, but blinded by a narrow, prejudiced definition of what a warrior looked like. He had seen men like Decker get entire teams wiped out because they underestimated an enemy who didn't fit their profile. And he had seen operators like the woman below, operators who moved through the world like ghosts, their competence a guarded secret, revealed only in moments of extreme violence and precision. Her gear was another clue. While the infantryman sported brand-new, factory-issue M4S, hers was different. It was an M210, the enhanced sniper rifle, but modified for close-quarters work with a shorter barrel and a specialized optic. It was scrupulously clean, yet the brass deflector and receiver showed the unmistakable wear of countless thousands of rounds fired. The finish was worn to a dull silver along the charging handle and the magazine well. This was not a weapon that sat in an armory. It was a tool that had been used and used hard by a master of their craft. It was a living record of a life spent on the range and in the field, a testament to a legacy of relentless practice. This was not a desk jockey's rifle. It was a professional sword. The klaxon blared, a jarring, ugly sound that signaled the start of the simulation. The squad of infantrymen tensed, a ripple of adrenaline passing through them. Decker stood by the main monitor in the control room, arms crossed, a smug look on his face, ready to critique every misstep. "All right, let's see what the senator's niece has got," he muttered to the technician next to him. The woman, Captain Eva Rostova, though no one knew her rank or name, moved to the primary entry point, a heavy steel door set into the concrete wall. She didn't rush. Her movements were fluid, almost unervingly serene. She approached the door and placed her gloved hand on it, not to push but to feel. For vibrations, for temperature changes, a subtle, almost imperceptible sign of life inside. It was a technique not taught in basic CQB courses. It was the craft of a master breacher. She took a deep breath, held it for a beat, and exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing. It was the shooter's breath, the physiological key to absolute stillness. From his vantage point, Colonel Vance recognized it instantly. It was the same breathing technique he had seen used by Delta operators and SEALs just before making a shot that defied the laws of physics. It was the conscious suppression of the body's fight-or-flight response, the assertion of pure mental will over animal instinct. Rostova gave a curt, single nod to the soldier designated as her number 2. It was her only command. Then, she turned the handle. The door was unlocked. A rookie mistake would be to throw it open and rush in. She didn't. She opened it just a crack, a technique known as slicing the pie. Her rifle came up, the optics seemingly fused to her right eye, the barrel leading her gaze as she scanned the sliver of the room now visible to her. Inch by inch, she widened the aperture, her body a fulcrum of controlled motion. The monitors in the control room showed her point of view. A section of wall, the edge of table, then a foot. She froze. Another inch. A leg, a torso, a man holding a simulated AK-47. Before Decker could even register the threat, 2 sharp, distinct cracks echoed from the kill house. On the monitor, 2 bright red circles appeared on the target's chest, grouped so tightly they almost overlapped. A perfect controlled pair. The entire sequence, from the door crack to the target neutralization, had taken less than 2 seconds. A stunned silence fell over the control room. The smirks on the faces of the waiting soldiers vanished, replaced by wide-eyed concentration. Eva Rostova did not pause to admire her work. She was already moving, flowing into the room like smoke. Her footsteps were completely silent, a skill honed over years of operating in environments where a single misplaced sound meant death. She didn't walk. She glided, her knees bent, her center of gravity low, her rifle always oriented towards the next likely point of danger. the next corner, the next doorway. The layout of the kill house was a maze of intersecting rooms and hallways, designed to disorient and overwhelm. But she moved through it with a chilling familiarity, as if she had the blueprints memorized. She wasn't just clearing a building. She was hunting. She came to a T-intersection, left or right. It was a classic tactical dilemma. A 50-50th guess could be fatal. But Rostova didn't guess. She paused for a single heartbeat, her head tilting slightly. She was listening, not just for footsteps, but for the subtle acoustics of the building, the way air moves, the faint hum of electronics that signaled a hidden trigger plate for a simulated IED. She chose left. As she rounded the corner, another hostile popped up from behind a stack of barrels. Again, there was no hesitation. 2 more precise cracks, and the target was down, the red lights on its chest confirming the hits. In the control room, Decker was leaning forward, his arrogance forgotten, replaced by a tense, professional focus. "How did she know to go left?" he whispered to himself. The technician pointed to a small sensor icon on the floor plan display. "ID trigger plate, right hallway, Sergeant." She must have heard the capacitor hum. Decker stared, dumbfounded. Hearing the hum of a pressure plate capacitor in the heat of a tactical scenario, while wearing a helmet and with adrenaline coursing through one's veins, was not just difficult. It was considered nearly impossible. It was the kind of sensory awareness that separated the elite from the merely excellent. Rostova continued, her movements an object lesson in tactical grace. She encountered a 3rd and 4th target in quick succession in a larger, open room. She engaged them flawlessly, transitioning between the 2 threats with an unnerving smoothness. 4 shots, 4 hits, 4 threats neutralized. Then she reached the final room. The monitor showed the scenario's crux, a hostile target holding a pistol to the head of a cowering hostage mannequin. The target was using the hostage as a human shield, exposing only a sliver of its head and shoulder. It was the classic hostage-taker shot, the most difficult and highest-risk engagement in close-quarters combat. A miss by a fraction of an inch would mean failing the entire evaluation. Decker held his breath. "No way she takes that shot," he muttered. "Too risky. Standard procedure is to disengage, create distance, wait for a better angle." But Eva Rostova did not follow standard procedure. She simply stopped, planted her feet, exhaled, and in one impossibly smooth motion, the rifle fired once. A single crack. On the monitor, a single red light appeared, dead center in the hostile target's forehead. The hostage was untouched. 6 threats neutralized. Rostova lowered her rifle and calmly scanned the room. The control room clock read. For minutes, 12 seconds. A deafening silence filled the room, a vacuum of pure, unadulterated awe. Decker stared at the screen, his mouth hanging slightly open. His entire worldview, his carefully constructed hierarchy of competence, had just been shattered in 252 seconds. "No," he finally stammered, his voice barely a whisper. That's not possible. The sensors must be wrong. Run a diagnostic. Run the whole thing again. Nobody is that clean." The heavy door to the control room swung open, and the atmosphere, already thick with stunned silence, became instantly charged with authority. Colonel Vance stepped inside, his presence commanding immediate attention. He didn't look at the monitors. He didn't look at the dumbfounded faces of the soldiers. His eyes, like chips of flint, were fixed on Staff Sergeant Decker. Decker, flustered, snapped to a semblance of attention. "Sir, we have a possible sensor malfunction on the course. The times are anomalous." Colonel Vance walked past him without a word, his boots making heavy, deliberate sounds on the concrete floor. He moved directly to the main control terminal, where the technician was nervously trying to rerun diagnostics as Decker had ordered. "Stand aside," Vance said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable weight of command. The technician practically jumped out of his chair. Vance leaned over the keyboard. His fingers, old and scarred, moved with surprising speed. He bypassed the standard user interface, typing in a long, complex string of characters. A black command window appeared on the screen, demanding a security key. Vance reached into his uniform pocket and produced a small cryptographic device, plugging it into a USB port. He entered a final passphrase, and the system unlocked, granting him access to the highest level of the Joint Personnel Database. The soldiers in the room exchanged nervous glances. This was far beyond a simple training debrief. This was something else entirely. Vance typed in a single, simple query the service number he had seen printed almost invisibly on the stock of the woman's rifle. The file that appeared on the screen caused a collective intake of breath. The first line was innocuous enough. Rostova, EVA. Rank, Captain attached. But it was the lines that followed that painted a picture of a life lived at the absolute apex of the military profession, a world away from senators and supply clerks. The screen became a litany of almost mythical achievements, each one more unbelievable than the last. Unit. Classified. Designation Echo 7. A designation so secret that most of the men in the room didn't even know existed. It was a Tier 1 Special Mission Unit, a ghost organization that answered directly to the highest levels of national command. Combat déploiement 14. The number was staggering, representing years spent in the most dangerous places on Earth. Special qualifications: Master Breacher, Advanced CQB Instructor, Category 4, High-Risk Hostage Rescue Specialist, Counterterrorism Operations Planner, Advanced Sniper/Observer. The list scrolled on, a curriculum vitae from a warrior legend. The final section of the file was the most damning. Awards: Distinguished Service Cross. Silver Star, with 2 oak leaf clusters, signifying 3 separate acts of valor. Bronze Star with Valor Device. Purple Heart, with 3 OLC. The screen was a constellation of the nation's highest honors for heroism in combat. And then, the final line, the one that recontextualized the entire morning, the one that turned Decker's humiliation into a profound institutional failure. Current assignment. Operational Readiness Assessment, FOB Griffin. Directed by Joint Special Operations Command. She wasn't being tested. She was the test. She was here to evaluate them, to see if their training standards, their instructors, and their soldiers were truly ready for the complexities of the modern battlefield. Colonel Vance straightened up, his face a mask of cold fury and profound respect. At that moment, Eva Rostova emerged from the kill house, her weapon now slung, her movements as calm and unhurried as they were before she began. She was performing a post-action check of her gear, her focus absolute. She seemed completely oblivious to the drama unfolding in the control room. Vance walked out of the control room and onto the main training floor. He strode directly towards her, his path intersecting hers. The remaining soldiers, along with Decker, followed, spilling out of the control room to witness the conclusion of this strange, tense drama. They stopped a respectful distance away. Rostova saw the colonel approaching and paused her gear check, her posture shifting to a formal parade rest. She simply waited. Colonel Vance stopped precisely 2 feet in front of her. He didn't speak. Instead, in an act that sent a shockwave through the assembled crowd, he snapped his entire body to the rigid, formal posture of attention and rendered a salute. It wasn't the casual salute one officer gives another. It was a gesture of profound, almost reverent respect, the kind a soldier gives to a holder of the Medal of Honor or to a living legend. "Ma'am," he said, his voice ringing with authority, "on behalf of this command, I apologize for the unprofessional reception you have received. It will be corrected." Rostova simply held his gaze, then gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. She raised her hand and returned the salute, crisp and perfect. "Thank you, Colonel," she said. Her voice was the same, flat, calm, professional. Then, Vance dropped his salute and turned to face the now ghostly pale Staff Sergeant Decker. "Staff Sergeant," he began, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "You are an instructor of soldiers. Your duty is to forge warriors, to identify and cultivate competence. It is not your job to pass judgment based on gender or appearance or your own narrow prejudices. You looked at a captain of the United States Army, a hero of this nation with a combat record that would make most generals feel inadequate, and you saw a senator's niece. You made an assumption. In our profession, assumptions get people killed. You didn't just disrespect a superior officer, Sergeant. You disrespected the very idea of the quiet professional, the warrior who proves their worth through deeds, not words. You failed this test more spectacularly than any recruit you have ever washed out of this course. You will render a formal, public apology to the captain. Now, the story of what happened in Kill House 7 spread through the forward operating base like a wildfire in a high wind. It didn't travel as idle gossip, but as a cautionary tale, a piece of instant folklore. The details were repeated with a hushed reverence in the chow hall lines, in the smoky confines of the designated smoking pits, and in the quiet of the barracks long after lights out. It was no longer just an event. It had a name. Some called it the Rostova Run. Others, more poetically, called it the 8-minute lesson, even though it had only taken her 4. The narrative was always the same. The arrogant instructor, the quiet woman, the impossible display of skill, and the final, crushing reveal. It became a touchstone, a cultural reset button for a community that sometimes prized bravado over genuine ability. The most profound transformation, however, was in Staff Sergeant Decker. The public dressing down from Colonel Vance, followed by the silent, judging eyes of the soldiers he was supposed to lead, had broken his brittle shell of arrogance. That afternoon, he found Captain Rostova near the base's small, sun-bleached library. She was sitting on a concrete bench, reading a worn paperback, looking for all the world like any other off-duty soldier. She looked up as he approached, her expression as neutral as ever. Decker stopped a few feet away, his hat in his hands. The usual swagger was gone, replaced by a profound and humbling weight. "Captain," he started, his voice rough. "Mom, I came to apologize. What I said this morning, there's no excuse for it. It was unprofessional, it was ignorant, and it was disrespectful. I was wrong." He stood there, waiting for a reprimand, for a dismissal, for anything. Eva Rostova closed her book, marking her page with her finger. She looked at him for a long moment, her gaze analytical, not judgmental. "Your mistake wasn't the insult, Staff Sergeant," she said, her voice calm and even. "The insult was just a symptom. Your mistake was valuing your assumption more than your observation. You saw what you expected to see, not what was actually there. In your line of work, that bias is a fatal flaw. It will make you underestimate an enemy or overestimate an ally. It will get your soldiers killed." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Your apology is accepted. The real question is, what did you learn?" Decker, humbled and earnest, simply nodded. "That competence doesn't have a uniform, ma'am. That I need to shut my mouth and open my eyes." Rostova gave a small, approving nod. "Good. That's a start." Then she did something unexpected. "Your tactical reload," she said, shifting the subject instantly. "It's a fraction of a second too slow. You're bringing the fresh magazine up from your belt in an arc. Bring it up in a straight line. Index it to the mag well with your pointer finger. It's more efficient. Shaves half a second off your time. Practice it." In that moment, she wasn't a superior officer chastising him. She was a professional, a master of the craft, sharing her knowledge. She had turned a moment of profound humiliation into a moment of pure, unadulterated mentorship. Decker was stunned into silence. He finally managed to choke. "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you, ma'am." He walked away from that bench a different man, the lesson burned into his very soul. The legacy of that day began to solidify in the weeks that followed. It wasn't just a story anymore. It became part of the base's institutional identity. Colonel Vance, a firm believer that lessons learned in blood or embarrassment should never be forgotten, decided to memorialize the event. He had the final target from Rostova's run retrieved from the kill house. It was the hostage-taker dummy, the one she had neutralized with a single, impossibly precise shot to the simulated forehead. The head of the mannequin, with its single, perfectly placed hole, was mounted on a simple wooden plaque. Below it, a small brass plate was engraved with just 3 pieces of information. Kill House 7. Time, 4:12. Assumptions are a liability. Vance hung the plaque himself on the wall of the main briefing room, the room where every soldier on the base received their initial orientation. It was placed right next to the door, the last thing they would see before they left. It became an object of quiet contemplation. New arrivals would ask about it, and an older soldier would tell them the story of the quiet captain who taught the whole base a lesson without raising her voice. The plaque wasn't a trophy of her skill. It was a monument to their collective mistake, a permanent reminder to look beyond the surface. Captain Rostova herself remained on the base for another 2 weeks, completing her readiness assessment. She was a quiet, almost invisible presence. She observed training, interviewed squad leaders, and filed her reports. She never once mentioned the incident in the kill house. When she interacted with Decker, which she did several times during other training evaluations, she treated him with crisp, professional courtesy. There was no lingering animosity, no hint of smugness. Her focus was absolute, her dedication to the mission unwavering. To her, the event was not a moment of personal vindication. It was simply a data point in her assessment of the base's culture and training deficiencies, a problem that had now been identified and corrected. On the day she was scheduled to depart, Decker was the one assigned to drive her to the airfield. The ride was mostly silent. As she prepared to board the gray, unmarked C-130 that would take her to her next classified destination, she paused. "You're a good instructor, Decker," she said, looking him in the eye. "You have the knowledge. Now you have the wisdom. Don't waste it." It was the highest praise he had ever received. He just nodded, unable to speak. He watched as she walked up the ramp and disappeared into the belly of the plane. The quiet professional, arriving without fanfare and leaving without a trace. Her only legacy a profound and lasting lesson in humility and respect. A year later, the culture at Forward Operating Base Griffin was demonstrably different. The change was most palpable at the CQB training facility. Staff Sergeant Decker was now the non-commissioned officer in charge of the entire program. His reputation had undergone a complete reversal. He was no longer known for his abrasive arrogance, but for his demanding, yet scrupulously fair, teaching style. He was tough, relentless, and held his students to an impossibly high standard. But he never, ever raised his voice in personal insult. He built his soldiers up with hard truths and expert critique, rather than tearing them down with cheap shots. His new mantra, repeated at the start of every single class, was simple. "Check your ego at the door," he would tell the new arrivals, his gaze sweeping over them. The person standing next to you, regardless of their size, their gender, or the patch on their shoulder, might be the one who saves your life. Your assumptions about them are your biggest weakness. Here, the only thing that matters is competence. Show me the Rostova run was now an official, though dreaded, part of the advanced CQB qualification. It was the final exam. The parameters were the same. 6 hostiles, 1 hostage, 8-minute time limit. To date, not a single soldier had managed to beat her time of 4:12. Most were lucky to finish under 7 minutes. Her performance had passed from being merely impressive into the realm of the legendary, a seemingly unreachable benchmark of tactical perfection. The plaque on the wall of the briefing room remained. It had become a stop on informal base tours for visiting VIPs. Colonel Vance would often use it as a teaching aid in his leadership development seminars for junior officers. He would tell the story, emphasizing not Rostova's skill, but Decker's transformation. "It's easy to be strong when you're right," Vance would say. "It takes a much greater strength to admit you were wrong, to learn from it, and to become better because of it. Captain Rostova exposed a weakness in our command, but Sergeant Decker is the one who fixed it." That is what a legacy of professionalism looks like. The story became a part of the institution's DNA, a living piece of folklore passed down from one generation of deployed soldiers to the next, a constant reminder that the most dangerous weapon on the battlefield is an unexamined prejudice, and the most valuable asset is the quiet professional who lets their actions speak for them. True legacy is not a statue in a park or a name carved on a wall. It is not found in the thunder of speeches or the echo of applause. It is a quieter, more profound thing. It is the lesson that endures after the teacher is gone. It is the change in behavior, the shift in culture, the standard that is raised and then fiercely defended by those who remain. Captain Eva Rostova left no statue. Her name was not on any building. For the hundreds of soldiers who passed through FOB Griffin after her departure, she was just a ghost, a name and a story attached to a time on a plaque. But her legacy was everywhere. It was in the respectful silence of a new class of soldiers as Sergeant Decker began his introductory speech. It was in the focused intensity of a young lieutenant, meticulously checking his gear, remembering the story of the worn-out rifle that told a deeper truth than a shiny new one. It was in the split-second hesitation a squad leader took to reevaluate a situation, pushing aside his first, easy assumption to look for the harder, hidden truth. The real triumph wasn't neutralizing 6 threats in 4 minutes. That was merely a demonstration. The real triumph was the idea she planted, that competence is the only currency that matters. That respect is not a gift to be given based on rank or appearance, but a debt to be paid to demonstrated excellence. That the loudest voice in a room is often the most insecure, while true strength, true confidence, resides in the calm, quiet discipline of those who have nothing to prove because their actions have already proven everything. The world is full of noise, of arrogant pronouncements, and superficial judgments. It is a world that celebrates the loud and often overlooks the quiet. But true impact, the kind that changes people and forges a lasting legacy, is almost always born in silence. It is forged in the lonely hours of practice, honed in the crucible of experience, and finally revealed not with a shout, but with a single, perfect, undeniable act. It is the quiet professional who reminds us that what you speaks so loudly, the world has no choice but to eventually listen. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption, and where silent precision defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.